Welcome, everyone. We're really glad to see you. We have some familiar names and faces and some new guests, so we're delighted. This is a series that we hold once a month, and today we're very excited to have Dr. Peggy Buffington to talk to us a little bit about innovation. So this is a collaborative partnership between two organizations that are associated with Purdue Northwest, the Leadership Institute, and my colleague Makisha Richardson is here, and the Society of Innovators, and my colleague Jason Williams, who leads the society, is here as well. So I'm going to pass to Jason. Dr. Buffington, thank you so much for making time for us. We're going to talk about innovation, and the reason we partner so well together between the Society of Innovation and the Leadership Institute is because leadership and innovation are two sides of the same coin. In order to be a leader, you have to be innovative, and in order to be an innovator, you have to show the bravery of leadership. So it's a really sweet partnership, and Peggy you are symbolic of both of those, innovation and leadership. So thank you so much for making time for us. So Jason, I'll kick it to you.
Yeah, well, thanks, Sheila, and good morning. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. I guess we're a couple minutes after the noon hour. Appreciate everyone taking the time to carve out. Excited to speak with Dr. Buffington. As Sheila mentioned, I'm going to introduce her here in just a minute. Just want to cover kind of one announcement and then one bit of housekeeping. First, this, as Sheila mentioned, that we're kind of on the innovation side of the coin today with this conversation. And this is actually taking place during World Creativity and Innovation Week. And so this is an initiative every year. The Society of Innovators is excited to help support in partnership with the Center for Creative Solutions out of Michigan City. So there's a number of different events happening this week related to that. Obviously, today's conversation and another one specifically we'll talk to Dr. Buffington about Innovate Within. The high school pitch competition is taking place on Friday. So we'll certainly touch on that here in a moment. And then as far as housekeeping, this is really fireside chat style. So Dr. Buffington and I will be having a conversation, but we do want to leave room for your questions and insights. So please feel free to use the chat throughout this conversation to share that, and we'll try and get some few minutes here at the end to address those. So thank you for that. So Dr. Buffington, thank you for joining us today. As far as a brief introduction to Peggy, Dr. Peggy Buffington currently serves as the superintendent for the school city of Hobart, where she provides leadership in the district's curriculum and instructional program. Dr. Buffington is passionate about early education, literacy, and STEAM, and college and career readiness. She also serves as co-chair of Ready NWI, the education arm of the One Region, One Vision leadership team to improve the quality of life in Northwest Indiana. The Society of Innovators has actually been blessed to be able to participate in that. We've joined that group earlier this year, so it's a great organization there as well. Peggy earned 2 degrees from Purdue University Northwest, later earning her doctorate from Purdue University down in West Lafayette. And she has certainly been well awarded throughout her career, but specifically, she has been named one of PNW's Outstanding Alumni Award winners and was inducted into the Society of Innovators back in 2017. So, Dr. Buffington, again, thank you for joining us. Obviously, just a snippet of your background and work. Really, the first thing we like to start with during these conversations is just to hear from you, maybe a little more in depth about your personal leadership journey and really how you got to where you're at today.
Well, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here today. And, I'm an educator. And I started off with elementary ed with a reading endorsement, but I really had a passion for technology and working with high ability children. And that was during my master's degree. And I kind of switched my master's degree up into instructional design. And I ended up doing an internship with Apple Computer. A lot of people don't know that's part of my background. And one of the discoveries was just recognizing the power of computing and technology, but also knowing the hesitancy of educators in using it. And why do I need to use it? Why do I have to change? And what does this do for me? And I basically just took that instructional background with Apple Computer, and I made it my life's work as a director of technology in the school city of Hobart to help people use the technology, and not just for replacement, but to innovate. right? And so, I mean, when you're trying to learn something new, we all know that we start off with, it could be a replacement, but how can I use this to do something different and make it better or make something new? And so that was a great challenge to me. And quite honestly, I absolutely loved it. I wouldn't come out of the classroom to save myself. Really, I love teaching. I ended up filling in a bunch of sabbaticals over at Purdue for some of my colleagues that were a part of my master's program, my professors. And I did see the power of helping educators be the best that they could be inside of their graduate work. And so I made it my life's mission then to go on for my PhD. Never really had an intention to be a superintendent, but I kept writing these grants, and I kind of saw in writing some of these grants that I had a lot of people that would say, sure, I might do it, but then they wouldn't do it. And then I was like, well, sometimes we just need a different approach as a leader to go about things to help people realize where the vision is and what the expectation is and how to inspire and persuade them to do the right things. So I'm down at Purdue, West Lafayette, continuing my background with instructional design, administration, and curriculum. And lo and behold, here I am as superintendent of schools. I love it. I could have went and taught at Purdue, and I decided to stay here because I really do love kids and I wanted to see our stuff through. But nothing excites me more than to help other teachers be the best that they can be. Because the end result is our students going out into society and being the best that they can be. So I hope that gave you a little bit of a background for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Already some great nuggets there on both leadership and innovation, and we're certainly glad you stayed here with us at School City of Hobart. I know you're certainly creating a model and really setting a positive example as far as leadership and innovation across the region. But again, with programs like I said, we'll touch on kind of Innovate Within being one example, right? I mean, the fingerprints that Hobart is making on the ecosystem here are just can't be ignored. So you touched on innovation a little bit already, talking about some of your experience with Apple and your role in the technology office at School City of Hobart. But that's really kind of the theme that we're talking about today. So what does innovation mean to you?
Well, when I think about innovation, I always try to look at it from the lens of my students. And I always like to approach it with my educators in the school city and just any of our sister districts, and helping kids be engaged and problem solve and possibly coming up with new inventions, right? But I do think that there are kids, and all of us have these special talents. But I also know that there are things in the world that engage them that possibly don't engage us. But it kind of starts with asking, like, is there something that you would like to problem solve or you would like to see different in the world, right? And I mean, I think that we so underestimate our students in terms of they have these thoughts about things. And so I think you got to unleash that with them. And it's difficult when you have all these state standards and curriculum and trying to keep your curriculum maps in order, but you're also trying to spark and engage your students to be a problem solver or to be an inventor to problem solve. Or how about you're going to invent something that makes people's life even better, right? Or enjoyable. And I think that one of the things that I've discovered with the use of technology way back in my master's degree with kids, because I literally would run these computer camps for kids and I would watch them code, and they were doing programming. I'm watching a little third grader do coding and start talking about the adaptations of frogs in the area and why is that happening, right? And so, I mean, and then I see that student grow up today, and he's a cancer research doctor up at Northwestern. And it's because he was sparked to think about, like, why is that happening to frogs, right? And he was using his technology skills to show adaptations and what they looked like and informing the public. And like, making people hypothesize, like, why is that happening? He was in 3rd grade. Now, what were my standards in 3rd grade? They were the life cycle of a butterfly and a frog, right? Okay, I could teach that all day long. It is so dry. Is that really solving today's problems with our ecosystem out in Lake George? Why do I have frogs that have adaptations that are abnormal, right? And I had a little 3rd grader trying to figure that out. Why? Because I gave him the opportunity. I challenged him, we unleashed him, and he went after it. But that's how all the kids were. So you get one kid that's like, well, I'm going to solve that. And you have another kid that's going to solve something else. And it's, how do you engage students to really tackle things? And I think one of the things that I see with Innovate Within is exactly that. I am going to take something and make it better, or I'm going to create something that truly makes other people's lives so much better. And I think that that's where I come from with this. I think part of the problem in education today, there's so much pressure put on testing, and obviously we need those accountability measures, but we are stifling kids inside of that environment if we don't let them take risks and wonder what they wonder about, right? What do you wonder about? We have something called the Makers Fair. We do it annually here in Hobart, and it's just so enlightening to watch what kids will do, whether it's in their classroom or whether it's at home. And these are these little secret things that they do that they are passionate about. And you just wonder how they're going to take it to the next level. And sometimes they need an adult that is going to help them like take it a step further. And that's how you excite your educators. Look what they're thinking. What can they do with that? There's such possibilities. I mean, I saw kids during Innovate Within where they lost loved ones to COVID, and they're trying to figure out a better system in the emergency room at the hospital. And they're coding and they're figuring out how to reprioritize in real time, how to take the most critical patients who possibly didn't make it because they didn't get their attention right away in the sequence of things. These are real problem solvers, right? So we have to tap into what's important to you. How do we engage them? And so I'm sorry, I could go on forever with this, but really the source of this is our kids. They do wonder, and they do have questions, and they have ideas. And our job is to bring it out in them. And I think we do a pretty good job of that, especially in the region. I'm really proud of Innovate Within. We have a great representation every time we go to the state. So proud of it.
Yeah, no, that's great. This has all been fantastic. Obviously, already explaining some of the programs that you have at School City of Hobart, and even some great stories of some of your students, past and present. So, no, thanks for sharing that. I guess one thing, I listened to all of that, and exactly really just backs up why we wanted to hear from you today. But right, I mean, these really are representations and stories of the organization of School City of Hobart, the culture that's been created at School City of Hobart. Obviously, you're the leader there. So I think one area of, as we talk about innovation leadership, I think one of those debates, is kind of how as a leader do you create that culture for innovation? And so we kind of have this pull and tug between kind of top down, innovation, mandates and kind of, ground up. How are you equipping your teachers and really frontline workers in the classrooms to be innovative? So if you can talk about that a little bit, I guess, really this, again, these stories are to me exemplary of that culture of innovation that is so strong at School City of Hobart. So how did that come to be?
Well, I think if you were to talk to my colleagues, I see a couple of them on the screen. I could be a little persuasive. And so, if I absolutely believe that something is really necessary for our students, I think sometimes hesitation with educators is because it's the unknown, it's change. How much more is it going to be on my plate? And then we have to ask the question, why? And why is it good for kids? And why should we do it? But there's some persuasion there. And I really do believe that my job is to provide vision, provide inspiration and to be persuasive, right? And so one of the things that I think is really important for an innovative leader is you have to be well-read. I mean, I am constantly I read nonstop, and I'm trying to stay at the forefront of what's important for my students. And so, I'm going to give a really good example here of AI, artificial intelligence. And if I took how many phone calls from my English department last year with their principals on we need better software detection on plagiarism and oh my goodness, watching school corporations across the country banning artificial intelligence. And I'm saying to myself, this is not going to solve the issue of artificial intelligence. How do we embrace it? And so I am going to share, this is so funny that the audience will laugh at this. If you know Sal Khan, he is the CEO of the Khan Academy, and his latest product is Khanmigo. It's the artificial intelligence wing of ChatGPT, but it's got guardrails for kids, right? So he approaches me with my director of secondary curriculum, Tim Krieg, Dr. Krieg, I'm going to say the beginning of March, and he asks us to pilot his Khanmigo artificial intelligence. Now, I want you to think about going to your educators the fourth quarter of school and saying, I need you to pilot this artificial intelligence. They already have a not so good taste in their mouth because they're dealing with plagiarism. And I'm like, whoa, okay, Sal Khan, it's a deal. So what do I do best? I have these little group meetings with them. I have individual meetings with them, and I'm talking to them about the why, right? Why would we do this? And why wouldn't we get engaged with this and learn more about it and embrace it as educators, because we can't run from it? And why wouldn't we expose our students to something that will be their world, right? And so, believe it or not, they took me up on it. And I am going to tell you that we were probably some of the most informant people to Sal Khan to make his product better. And my students, by the way, who knew that they were a part of this pilot, were actually helping him make his programming better. And I think that that is the beauty of this. You get teachers to understand that kids have the power to help you be better, as well as getting them to be better. I think it's all about risk taking too. Letting them know that you are giving them permission to go do this and they can take the risk, right? And so did we take risks using artificial intelligence to write their papers and teaching them what are the boundaries and teaching your kids digital citizenship and where's your voice versus the artificial intelligence and what's acceptable, what's not. So I think that, and I do have some colleagues on here that would tell you that, we certainly have a leg up on how to use it appropriately. And we're growing. And then what do? We go out and teach other people. And so I think that there's beauty in the power of persuasion and just talking about the why. But you're not going to know that if you're not well read. Right? So you as a leader, you have to be on the forefront of what is coming, what is out there, and what are the steps you need to take to be out in front, right? And so, and then it's persuading your people. And I do think that, a lot of times when you're talking about adults, they too have to be like, well, why do I have to do this and why not? Well, I should be able to prove to you that it's best for your students, and it will also make you an amazing educator, right? Because you are empowering kids. And so I think that that's something that's really important. Inspiring, persuasion, be well-read, and be a risk taker, and give them the time to be risk takers.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that and kind of those insights on what it takes to be that leader. We could certainly pause and just continue to dive onto the technology science and the AI, obviously, such a fascinating area, but I really appreciate you recognizing the benefits side. I mean, obviously there's that balance, in the education space, whether in your space or at the university environment around plagiarism and some of those guardrails. But all of us in industry, right, we're surrounded by it. We may have auto captions on some of our screens on Zoom right now. I mean, that's AI. My background was with Canva helped me build that using AI. So it's obviously an area in the technology that we have to learn to not only live with but to use. And I guess I wanted to you stop there to kind of shift us a bit. I think one thing that brings us to Peggy is I know that you and your leadership team do such a good job of staying connected with industry and really aligning what you're seeing in real time and what you're being told by folks in industry about the skills and the areas that your students need to be prepared for. So if you could talk about that a little bit of just how is that dynamic? And maybe this is a chance to bring the Ready NWI group into the equation as far as why you created that group and what it is. But talk about that a little bit, about just how you kind of stay on that forefront of the skills that you see that your kids are going to need.
Well, thank you for that. And, Linda Wolashansky, I know many of you know Linda. She started Ready Northwest Indiana. There were 5 of us that started it. I see Mark Sperling on here. And 5 of us were meeting and just recognizing that our employers had different needs and how were we meeting those needs, and a little bit of disconnect with higher ed, K-12, CTE, career and technical ed, and our employers. And quite frankly, we're still building those bridges. It's tough, right? Because things change rapidly, state requirements, what their workforce needs are. And so this is a group of educators, superintendents, counselors, high school principals that meet monthly. And, higher ed is a part of it, the employer aspect of it, trying to figure out how are we the feeder system to this pipeline for our employers? And, I'm going to tell you that COVID really put everybody in shock. And, we're getting ourselves back where we need to be with it. But connecting with our employers is really important. And we have an audience that comes all the time. I will say that a lot of it for the K-12 side is trying to muddle through some of the requirements. I mean, we're getting ready to have some new diploma changes that we're all going to talk about, but they're beneficial to our employers. And so one of the things that you'll see Ready do, for all of you who do not know, diploma changes coming in the state of Indiana. And what will happen with that class of 2029, you can actually get yourselves acclimated to it now, and you can chime in and use it early if you want. But there's a lot of work-based learning involved here where kids can go off into internships and they would get points, kind of moving away from the Carnegie unit. I'm sorry if that's a little too technical for some of you that are in the K-12 era, but there's 4 states that are piloting this, where we're looking at, and Indiana is one of them, how to engage more with employers. And one of the things that when we sit down with industry and business, and I will give Ready Northwest Indiana, Amy Burke, as we're working and trying to meet with just a segment of our business people on what their needs are, and they're worried about why kids are not signing up for this or signing up for that. And we talk to them, we say kids change their minds. We want them to change their mind in high school, not so much so when they're in that 4-year college or if they're in that apprenticeship. But if we get them to explore in our area, maybe they'll be a little more committed when they leave us. So we have rich dialogue about their employment needs. We have rich dialogue about, what's up and coming. I think one of the things that's really important as a superintendent, or if you're out there in your business, in your industry, what do you have up and coming that are labor market trends that you have shortages in? And I'll give you a really good example. It is St. Mary's here in Hobart. I have an amazing partnership with Janice Rybaugh, the CEO at St. Mary's. And I know what some of her needs are in terms of employment and some of the opportunities that we partnered together to offer our students. I know what her shortages are. I know where my boundaries are with age restrictions. And then sometimes we have to bring in Ivy Tech as a partner. So here's a great example. They have such a shortage of surgical technicians that they're begging us to help them with that, right? So we bring in Ivy Tech, Atso, and his crew over at Valpo, and we're like, how do we begin kids in surgical tech, which is an associate's program? And we started a central technician assistant to get them started in high school. And that's rich dialogue with your employer. So look, reaching out to your employer groups. I could say the same thing about NIPSCO. You know, they have a retiring workforce. And how do we build programs to help them with energy and changing energy that's green energy? Again, working with Ivy Tech and NIPSCO, we have a great partnership at Ivy Tech with them. So I think that the employer side of it is an important segment of Ready Northwest Indiana, but I'm not going to possibly meet all of those employers. But this is to engage employers out there. Come to us.
Mm-hmm.
Janice Ryba not shy about coming to us, and neither would NIPSCO, right? So I'm encouraging any employer out there with your shortages, your needs, tell us what they are, because we can change programming to help meet your needs.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for sharing more about that. And again, obviously, you know, really on the front lines of hearing from industry and you know, kind of being in touch with some of those specific needs. And I mean, it sounds like certainly, right, doing a great job of aligning, you know, specific career paths or even technical skills that are going to help fill some of those needs. But there's also, call it the, you know, I guess the soft side. You've already talked about, you know, kind of problem solving, power of persuasion, you know, kind of brings us to, I'll say just that kind of culture, ecosystem of innovation that you have created at School City of Hobart, specifically with your students. So Innovate Within, we've already referenced a couple times. That is, for those not familiar, this is a statewide business pitch competition for Indiana's high school kids. So it's, again, statewide program. So think Shark Tank for our high school students. And Hobart High School has traditionally been our strongest Northwest Indiana competitor. I think a couple state titles under your belt there at Hobart High School. Another state finalist last year. So Peggy and her team do an amazing job of preparing students for that competition. But if you talk to the Innovate Within team and Started Up Foundation specifically as the group behind that, right, that, you know, one of the biggest themes that they preach is that, yes, of course, this is a business pitch competition. These kids are creating business plans and in many cases launching a business out of it, but it's not about kids starting businesses. It's about preparing kids for 21st century, you know, careers and jobs, and getting them to think like entrepreneurs, to think like innovators, even if the business they work on in high school, you know, ceases to exist after this specific competition. So I guess, you know, kind of a continuation of the same, you know, question then, Peggy, is, you know, as you're thinking about more of those innovation skills and really, you know, kind of building this structure to support an outlet like Innovate Within, you know, how are you thinking about that as far as, you know, again, creating, you know, innovators with our students?
Yeah, and I actually love this question because you always have to be thinking, you know, about your youngest and your feeder systems, right? And so, you know, way back in the day, I was over at Purdue and we actually were talking to the Department of Defense on the shortage of engineers that we had, right? And so I've had Project Lead the Way engineering in my school district since 1998. We were one of the first PLTW systems in the state. And what a lot of people can mimic, you know, engineering programs, whatever.
Mhm.
Why do I like it? It is a national curriculum that has professional development. I do not have teachers that I have to worry about. They really don't know how to develop a curriculum and the training that goes behind it. And educators, they have to have that confidence, right? They do. So when I found out about the shortage, and then I'm talking to my PLTW teachers, a lot of kids going into that program were not being successful because they did not have the skills from below, right? And so here's a really good example. So then I open it up in 6th grade And I'm talking to a little 6th grade student. Okay, this is really, it's a great story. I'm talking to a 6th grader at kindergarten registration with his little sibling registering for kindergarten. And I said, how's it going at the middle school? He goes, well, I'm getting all A's. He said, and his mom said, be honest with Dr. Buffington. And he goes, I'm getting an F in Project Lead the Way. I'm like, how could you be getting all A's and get an F in Project Lead the Way? He's like, well, Dr. Buffington, he goes, I can't get the project to work and I don't know what to write in my log. And so I said, but part of being an engineer or a scientist or a researcher is that you have to try, right? And you're not always going to get the right answer. And so you have to try again. And what did you discover with those trials? Learning from that situation, going to our PLTW teachers and saying, I mean, like, it was so obvious to me that number one, they're used to canned answers. Number two, they're so afraid of failure. And then number three, because of the failure, just giving up. And so when you're innovating, trying to teach our kids that it's okay to not get a right answer, when you're trying to develop something and you're learning from your trials and your mistakes and you're logging it, making a hypothesis and changing your mind. That just opened up all kinds of avenues for me to see that, wow, we're not teaching them how to take more risks, and it's okay to take these risks and to learn. This is what scientists do. This is what people do in life when they develop things. They have trial and error. So one of the things that I did, again, going to a national curriculum that has professional development, I took TLTW Launch, and that's the elementary series, and we have that as our STEM curriculum, and it's part of, we count that as science with our science standards. It's correlated, but it's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and it's from kindergarten. It's all the way up. And so let me give you an example at our latest Makers Fair. I had students in 4th grade that brought in their damaged stuffed animals and were learning how to create prosthetics for their stuffed animals and how to make them work, right? And so the point is that I'm already having them think about, how do I problem solve that, right? And so these are really ingenious things. I'm watching kids at the kindergarten level with their robots, and their robots learning how to pick things up and bring them back, right? So they're learning how to code, how to problem solve. So I would just say the feeder system is important. And I'll give you the best analogy. When the Indianapolis Colts were moving here from Baltimore, they were like, how are we gonna get fans to be for these Colts, right? They didn't go to the adults. Who did they go to? They went to the kids, right? So like, they needed to start with a generation that would appreciate that they have a football team in their state to go after. You have to have a good feeder system. You have to.
Yeah, thank you. I think we could all agree. We could just sit here and pull stories of your students out for hours. It's fascinating to hear what everyone's working on. So I appreciate you touching on the feeder system. And then once they get to that high school level, again, obviously an outlet like Innovate Within, but I know there's several other programs that that the students are encouraged to participate in to kind of showcase the problems they're solving. But it's my understanding too that there's kind of a unique aspect to what's happening at Hobart High School as far as some of the kind of cross-pollination between disciplines and even some physical layout and organization of how classes and class schedules are fit. Can you talk about that a little bit, about how you're kind of getting this cross-disciplinary approach?
Right. Well, I mean, if you sat through enough innovation with some of your students, we all have talents, but we recognize we don't have all the talents needed for a provisional patent or getting that product in the startup foundation, right? So we recognize this early on and listening to some of their pitches that, let's start them up with having to understand a business model and that they cannot possibly do everything And I'm going to use our engineers as an example. They're so beautiful at creating something and making a product, but they cannot market it. They cannot sell it. They do not know how to do accounting. We were just going, oh my. And I also kind of found in my tenure here is watching all of this, I would have tons of kids up in the biomedical research area that had these ideas, but they had no idea how to build it, right? So I'm going to give like a back brace as an example. Most back braces are done in the back, and they were like, no, then they need somebody to put it on. So why wouldn't a back brace be in the front? And so going down to our engineers and saying, how do we make this for the front, right? So what we did in cross-discipline is we created a 7th hour where our biomed kids, our engineering kids, our business and marketing entrepreneurship class, our graphics design and TV studio, they all have the same hour. And so trying to crossbreed those kids and say, okay, go down to accounting and work on a budget, right? And so go to the TV studio, go to the marketing people on how would you appeal to the market? Because I'm going to tell you, these engineers can come up with great ideas. They're not very good at marketing them. And so they started learning from their colleagues and true model in the workplace, right? I have to work with other people to solve things and make things better, right? And so I love that. One of the other things that we did in our power hour is voice and choice. If you need academic assist, you can get it. If you don't need academic assist, you get to choose something to do. And during that hour, we actually have something called Innovate Hour. You can go down to our startup ed classroom with our instructor, Daniel Schultz, and he will help facilitate anything that you want to work on that you have an innovative idea. So it's not just part of their curricular aspect of it. It's also a part of like, well, I'm not in that class, but maybe I'm interested in that. So we have an open forum time for them to go down for that as well.
Okay. Yeah, great. Thank you for sharing. And I could keep going, but I recognize that 45 minutes can come really fast when we have a great presenter like yourself. So I did want to pause and honor the fact that we do have some questions starting to come in from some folks that have tuned in. So I want to make sure we get to those with the few minutes we have left. So the first question we have, you touched on failure. And kind of how that fear of failure can be such an impediment to our success. So if you could kind of touch again on how we might think about teaching kids or younger professionals to overcome this barrier.
I have to tell you, that is a tough one. And one of the things that, and I'll just share with all of you as we look at this generation that came out of COVID, there is a little bit of apathy and giving up really quick, right? And so our job is to teach them, first of all, to have, coping skills, that things will be okay, and help them with mental health because anxiety is really high. And their anxiety gets worse if they believe that they can't be successful at something. So one of the things that is really important, particularly, is to let them see through experimentation and a few tries that it's okay that it didn't work out, right? And then maybe set up another time where their neighbor was able to do it and now you go over and help, right? So I think it's the power of you get a redo, try it again, right? And so setting up laboratories for them, particularly in our STEM environment, where they see that you're going to fail before you're successful. And that happens almost all the time. And then I think reminding them of the greats in society who literally failed so many times, right? But we're showing them that it's okay that you didn't get it right the first time, the second time, or the third time, but eventually you will, right? And so we have to set up that kind of an environment in our classrooms where they see that's okay. Otherwise, they're not going to want to try, right? Who wants to fail? So we have to let them see that failure leads to success, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, do you know, are there any teachers or anything, anyone, you know, I guess helping celebrate those failures? I mean, we see that on occasion, right? If, maybe there's a fail fest or, do a kind of celebration out of it. Just any stories or examples there that you might pull from.
Well, I guess I can go that back to this to innovate within. Let's talk about that for just a second, because this would be purely an example of any student in a school corporation. They go to a competition and they don't win, but they have an amazing idea. And so I have had, and Jason, you would know this. I mean, I had 150 kids at that's narrowed down, and I have 2 participating this Friday. But that's a heavy burden that I didn't win. But you did win. You have a great idea. And so we have to help them see that the world is competitive, right?
Right.
And so the world is competitive. And so if you really believe your product is that good, let's continue working on it. And let's go out there and find a different competition, a different scholarship, a startup ed, and let's continue with product development. And I have had kids that are out at Valpo University, Purdue, whatever. They come back to our high school because they know there's a level of support there for them to get their idea across. I can only tell you that the level of disappointment, so many of them want to quit and give up their product, but it's us encouraging them, inspiring them to move forward because they're disappointed and they feel like a failure. Our job is to teach them that no, you are not. You don't give up on yourself or your product. And again, we talk to them about how competitive the world is, right? That's a reality. It is reality.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for that. And yes, I can attest to, the fact that, of course, it's competition, and then there is only one winner at the region level and ultimately one at state. But, we've seen even a young man from Hobart High School last year that I think he placed second at state. But again, he didn't win, but he's continuing to work on what should very soon be a successful business for him.
Right. I mean, he's got a provisional patent.
Right.
I mean, I had the group of freshman girls with Patchables. I mean, they have over $350,000 in scholarships. They will never have to worry about paying for education and continuing education, and they're still developing their product to make it even better. They were freshman girls, and they've got a great product. They truly do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so did want to pull a couple more here. I guess more of some commentary, but we've got someone tuning in that works in the insurance industry. Just recognizing that, this, from their perspective, is an older industry. Lots of folks getting ready to retire. And, kind of thinking about how do we give kids opportunities to develop themselves professionally, to be innovative thinkers in some of these kind of legacy industries. Again, I know with your work at Ready NWI, you're very in tune with, where some of those opportunities are. And we had a discussion at the last session, around, maybe folks retiring that have a business, maybe entrepreneurs that just have no one to hand that to. So maybe just touch on that a little bit about, kind of how we think about these, call them traditional industries that maybe don't have as much interest with students right now, but there's still so much opportunity there.
And it is, I mean, I think sometimes in industry, let's talk specifically with the trades, they perhaps think that we don't promote the trades enough. And so I think it has to go back to kids' interests, but I think it also has to get them out in the field, right? So you have to do lots of I'm going to call them study trips, letting them explore, have awareness with what all of these industries are. And in particular in Northwest Indiana with manufacturing and production, we have to do more of that, and we recognize that. And so working with our employers, we can go to their conferences and things like that, but it's also engaging at their workplace. What are the credentials needed? How do we backpedal and have a better feeder system in our high schools? I do think that the new diploma encourages that through work-based learning. So I'm pretty excited about that. And I really do think that our employers will be excited about it after we iron out all of those details. But I think there's nothing more powerful than sitting down with employers in the region, and I mean, you have to start somewhere, start in your own backyard, right? And then just branch out. And to the employers that are on here, if you have needs, then go to your school corporations and talk to your superintendent, right? And we can make things happen, trust me. I wouldn't have the energy program I have if I didn't have that connection with NIPSCO. I would not have all of the programming that I have at St. Mary's if I didn't have a great working partnership with Janice Ryba. We want to work with you. Just let us know what your needs are. And I can call up Mark Sperling or Atso Sikowski and say, hey, I need to start a program. And they're really good about that.
Yeah, fantastic. Some great closing thoughts. I see we're at time. Just one really quick final question I'm going to pull from our chat. We have some interest. You mentioned the maker fairs that School City of Hobart hosts. So when are those? When can we, how can we find out about those to attend?
Well, we just had it. It was a week ago. And it is just, we do it in the spring. We typically will run it right after spring break because we allow kids that extra time over spring break to put finishing touches on their products. You would be quite surprised what some of these kids are doing with their own YouTube channels and all kinds of interesting things that, you know, and it'll make you wonder like, wow, they're doing that outside their classroom. And so it's really important for us to recognize as adults and as educators in particular that they have interests that are beyond what's part of their regular day. And how do we tap that? And you won't know that unless you give them opportunity, right? So that opportunity is to come show your creativity, your innovation, your ideas. And, you know, I found that a lot of philanthropy going on with our students. And so they were making things, and if you donated, they were donating to the Hobart Humane Society, or they were donating to the food pantry, because we don't allow them to sell their product there. But then all of a sudden I saw a bunch of donations popping up, and people like purchasing things that these kids had made, so that they could support other things. So it's not just their products and provisional patents and things like this. It's a way of life, quality of life. And I'm seeing kids give back to their community through innovation. So it's pretty spectacular. And it's not hard to run a maker's fair. I'm happy to share with people how we do it, and been doing it for years. And there's 2 times of the year that are probably my favorite. It's obviously graduation and that completion of their formal education, walking across the stage. By the way, I'll plug my early college program. 25% of my kids had 1 year of college last year, and 15% of them had associate's degrees. I'm really proud of that. But what I would say to you, besides graduation, there's nothing like a maker's fair. Nothing like it.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that. So yeah, we should have hosted you a month ago, and we'd all be ready to show up in force. But we'll certainly keep that on the calendar for next spring. Well, thank you, Peggy, so much for taking the time to join us. As I've already said, we could keep going. There's so much here that we could learn from you and what's happening at School City of Hobart. But we do want to also respect the time that we had everyone commit to today. But we really appreciate hearing from you. To close out, just a couple, kind of announcements. Again, we talked about Innovate Within. So the Innovate Within Region 4 finals, so Northwest Indiana regional finals, are taking place Friday morning this week at the P&W campus in Hammond. I know we have 10 teams from across the region, actually 8 different schools represented this year. So it's good to see some competition. It helps keep everyone sharp. But I know we have 2 teams participating this year that have students from Hobart represented. So certainly still going strong as far as what's happening at School City of Hobart. And again, some titles to defend as far as recent state champions and a state runner-up last year. Also wanted to reference, you mentioned Patchables. So the young women behind that company, they did win state as freshmen in high school. So they're still working on their business as juniors in high school now, but also inductees into the Society of Innovators as freshmen in high school. And their teacher, Dan Schultz, who I think I saw his name on here, was also an inductee into the society for his work really driving innovation within the School City of Hobart system. So again, innovation is all over your fingerprint.
Can we throw a plug to Faith Spencer, who is a 2nd place state winner from Hobart, but she started a company with her colleague and friend down in Gary called Ironworks, WORKZ, and she is an amazing she's an influencer and she is an innovator, and she's making waves down in Gary, and I'm so proud of her. I'm sorry, I had to interrupt you and throw her out.
No, please. I appreciate that. Yes, Faith in our works has already become a great community partner for us and the work we're doing to support entrepreneurship and innovation around the region. So absolutely, and another great success story of alumni not only from Hobart but also the Innovate Within program.
Right.
So again, this is a great conversation, and we keep going. But Peggy, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you, everyone, to carve out part of your week to join us.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Buffington.